Paranormal skeptics of Reddit. Which famous case do you think are most likely to be legit? Go to the answer. It's not a famous case, but I'm a skeptic who has seen a UFO. I have absolutely no clue what it was, but there were a lot of us who watched a green light move very quickly around the sky before shooting off into space. This was around 15 years ago and very close to an army base, so I've always just chalked it up to something they were doing. But whatever it was, I understand why people who see this sort of thing think it's a legit UFO. I've racked my brains for answers of what that could have been for years without understanding how that could have worked. Go to the next answer. Dyatlov Pass never really received an adequate explanation. Each proposed idea has glaring holes or requires the reader to assume experienced climbers to make completely irrational decisions even before hypothermia set in. Second, there was an incident in Iran where F-14s were scrambled to intercept something. Ground radar had it, the Tomcats with advanced radar had it, and one pilot got a visual before it seemed to defy physics and run away. Most credible UFO report I've heard due to multiple witnesses and tracking it on both ground and air radar. Go to the next answer. There are plenty of examples of things for which there was never any proof, and then once there was proof, everyone said damn. Turns out it really happened and now it's not considered paranormal. But it was at one point. One that sticks out to me is that both US and Soviet armies had psychic forces in their militaries. There's a great book called The Men Who Stare at Goats about it. The movie is something of a parody of the non-fiction book. But the paranormal forces actually discovered all sorts of things that turn out to be totally usable, such as pheromone tracing and psycholinguistic training, that actually work. The fact that we can now explain how they work doesn't make them seem like anything less of psychic abilities as they seemed back then. Go to the next answer. I'm skeptical of all paranormal things. The only thing I can really see as slightly legit is the skinwalker or the not deer I think it's called. Basically, I think any creepy wildlife can be legit, and the only cryptid or legend I could possibly believe is the skinwalker. Go to the next answer. The idea that we're in a computer simulation. It is, of course, unprovable, but there's some weird shit about reality going on. There are an infinite amount of real numbers between 0 and 1, yet the integers show up in the equations for sound dissipation over distance, gravitational attraction, motion, the conversion of mass to energy, and a bunch of other things. Why can't the laws that govern the universe be reduced to very simple equations that have integers? Why doesn't E equals MC1.99999 or E equals MC2.0001? It's almost like someone programmed reality this way. We can make simulations, plural. We can make lots and lots of copies. We can run them all and see what the most likely outcome of a given simulation will be. Given enough computer power, we could make an infinite number of simulations of the universe. With that in mind, the odds of being in the real universe instead of a simulation of it become vanishingly small. We live in a 4-dimensional universe, one with length, width, depth, and time. But why stop at 4? In the same way that a painting is a 2-dimensional rendering of a 3-dimensional object, our universe could be a simplified, 4-dimensional rendering of some higher dimensional reality. These questions imply the existence of a programmer, a being whose purposes are beyond our comprehension. I am an atheist and a skeptic, and if I have to choose between a natural explanation and a supernatural one, I will always choose the natural one. But I admit the concept of simulation programmer is very similar to a theist concept of God. Go to the next answer. Too many people across the world dating back centuries have seen creatures that could be described as Yetis or Sasquatch for there not to be some kernel of truth to it. I don't think they exist anymore, but I'm willing to bet at some point they did. Go to the next answer. UFOs are a real thing. I don't necessarily believe they are aliens, but with the release of military videos showing craft doing supposedly remarkable things, I think it's most legit thing going. The vast majority of what people claim is evidence of paranormal activity are fakes or misidentifications, misunderstandings of mundane things. The human mind has an amazing way of tricking itself into believing so many things that are contrary to reality or filling in gaps in information and things they don't understand with concepts they can grasp. Imagination is a survival coping mechanism that turns a noise in the night into a terror that must be avoided, which actually does serve to keep people safer, and believing that people exist beyond death helps living people deal with things like grief and loss. Go to the next answer. People who die and come back, not reincarnation, although that in itself is super interesting to delve into and read about, but people who are clinically dead and are then successfully resuscitated. Also, people's accounts of sensing others in the room when someone is on the verge of passing away, or accounts of people who can still sense the presence, or aura, of someone recently deceased. For the first, I had an emergency C-section when I was 21. Apparently, during it I briefly died. My husband was present for the whole thing and told me about it afterwards. Anyway, while out, I was a ball of light, traveling down a sort of labyrinth made up of pulsing white walls. There was a voice telling me that who I had been no longer mattered. That all was well and as it should be, and I remember feeling very sad that I was leaving so soon, but also recall feeling suffused with a sense of inevitability and resignation, like, oh well, this is just how it is. Next thing I know I'm being asked my name, the date and why I'm here. It's a nurse and I can hear my husband calling my name and telling me our son was fine. I remember being unable to fully open my eyes. The room was too bright, especially the window or door directly across from me. I remember telling them, my husband and my mom, to close the door, to close the curtains, to turn off the bright light. They were confused. There was no bright light, window, or door. When I finally could get my eyes open I saw they were right. It was just a bland hospital wall, and the lights in the room were very dim. Growing up, I used to see a guy I called Shioniko at our house all the time. I thought he was actually an uncle or friend of the family for the longest time. We moved and over time I realized I stopped seeing him come around. I asked my mom if Shioniko was okay cause he never came around anymore. Of course she had no idea who I was talking about. It was very frustrating trying to explain it to her. Years later she ran into our former landlady who asked her if we had ever had any problems while living at the house. Mom said not at all. The landlady told mom that she couldn't keep any tenants in there since we moved. Said they complained about their kids seeing an old man hanging around the place. Then dropped the bomb. You don't think it's old Nicholas, do you? And mom remembered an old neighbor that had passed away shortly after we had moved into the rental. And she remembered me asking about Shioniko. So anyway, who knows? The universe is huge. So many mysteries and unexplained events. There's bound to be some truth to some of them. Go to the next answer. I wouldn't call myself particularly skeptical, as I've always been open-minded enough to have an interest in it. I've only recently started to delve into the different investigations on YouTube. Do you have any channels to recommend? Anyway, I didn't just come here for suggestions. The reason for my comment is because I was watching BuzzFeed in the Viper Room just last night. Whilst I usually watch them for the comedy aspect rather than the actual investigation, I found it really weird how the spirit box reacted when he tried speaking to River Phoenix. He starts the conversation complimenting the actor's work and mentioning a movie he loved which River was in. The spirit box interrupts him to say thank you, and if I remember correctly they ask who that was, and the spirit box replies with River. I don't know how the device works and usually don't see anything particularly freaky happen with them, but up until that point the spirit box wasn't really getting any responses, and it was just really weird how it instantly reacted to River Phoenix and each response correlated somehow rather than being interrupted with the usual jibber jabber. Whether that's a coincidence or it was set up somehow I really have no idea, but I'm usually even more skeptical when it comes to the famous cases because it just seems less likely to me for some reason. But there was definitely something strange with that place. The spirit box went on to get pretty active and switched from Phoenix to talking to the previous owner who's rumored to be buried beneath the club. That part is also pretty freaky in the sense that almost every response correlated without having any interruptions in between that didn't mean anything. Go to the next answer. I recommend that you watch BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural. They investigate haunted places without the bullshit with cameras everywhere and all other quizmas. At first they never caught solid proof, so I was reassured they didn't exist until the episode of the Charleston Old Town Jail where they caught a part of their apparition. That is the best proof on the internet. Also, as a Muslim, our religion says ghosts exist, but they live in a different realm than the one we are in. Go to the next answer. The thing is, if by legit you mean actually happened exactly the way they're told, none of them. There isn't a single paranormal story that doesn't require some massive assumptions outside what we know to be true about the universe. And it doesn't make sense to alter your understanding about how the universe works based on someone's personal account. Go to the next answer. Sasquatch seems to be the most realistic to me, considering creatures that matched their description used to walk the earth. I'm also not entirely unwilling to admit that Megalodon or Plesiosaur could still be alive either. Maybe something like Mothman or other various earth-based creatures could exist, but so far there's no traces besides a couple of witnesses here and there. Aliens could also be real, however I don't expect much information to come from that front in my lifetime. Ghosts are off the table for me though, until something more concrete happens. I'm going to remain skeptical. Same thing with demons. Go to the next answer. Twice in my life I've seen what looked like animal skeletons and skin-tight latex or something running by. The first time I saw it running across a field, it looked like what you'd imagine a wolf-like skeleton with like a vacuum-sealed latex skin over it. Basically the most extreme possible definition of skin and bones. Then years later I saw skin and bones deer-like creature dart across the road while driving. These were wire-eyed, too skinny to be living animals, and I brushed off the first sighting as a kid to my imagination until it happened again as an adult with a different looking animal. These were both solid black and too skinny to be real animals misidentified. Go to the next answer. Mostly atheist, I believe there could be things outside our understanding with scientific explanations. But that doesn't make it not creepy. I don't believe any famous cases because I know people like to make shit up and I can't verify their truthfulness. I believe only a few people that I know. My mom and her cousin saw a UFO on the farm in western Oklahoma when they were about 1370s. It was a great big light that came down and hovered over the barn, then took off almost faster than they could see. It scared them shitless. And to this day, they are both spooked by it and tell the exact same story despite not seeing each other for many years at a time. My sister saw a ghost when she was a kid. My sister is so freaking serious and has no reason to ever lie to me. She also refuses to ever talk about it now. I believe she saw something. I have no idea if it was a child's random figment of imagination. She had run back upstairs in the neighbor's house in the middle of the day to grab her coat as they all left, so she wasn't exactly prepared for a fright or a break in the space-time continuum. She saw a Native American man in the corner, but like, it was bright daylight shining in that corner. Go to the next answer. I have a diaria in which the planet Earth is like a terrarium and we were watched by aliens. But since we already destroyed our habitat, they abandoned us. This would explain why there are not as many sightings as before. According to me, it makes sense. Go to the next answer. I was a skeptic until Monday. Me and a group of my friends were hanging out with each other. This one friend I have is super sensitive to everything. I share this account with her. As we were walking through the town, she all of a sudden grabbed the back of her neck and told us to hurry into the closest shop. We did, and all of a sudden an extremely strong wind pushed everyone who was outside to the ground. We could hear the building itself creaking and seeing things and even people being thrown against it. After a while, it stopped. We all thought it was a tornado since we lived in Texas. There was never any report of a tornado. When we asked her about it, she just said someone pissed them off. Though I'm still skeptical about some things, and I try to find a logical explanation to anything and everything, I do now believe that some paranormal things are real, especially after the experience one of our other friends had with her at a sleepover. Go to the next answer. Anything involving the ocean. Giant squids used to be an old sailor's tale, but we found them to be real semi-recently. Deep sea gigantism is real, meaning huge creatures live at incredible depths that we are unable to explore. Sperm whales hunt giant squid at depths that are nearly unexplorable to humans. Could this mean a megalodon is possible? Sure. But it could also mean we have unimaginable, almost alien creatures living on our planet. Forget from another planet. We might live with some of the most inconceivable creatures on our very own Earth. Go to the next answer. Ghosts, demons, ghouls, zombies etc. are all demonstrably bullshit. I don't believe humans have ever made contact with aliens, but with more stars than there are billionths of a second for which humans have existed, I'd be amazed if aliens don't exist out there somewhere. Though they are likely closer to a bacterium or a plant than to green dudes in flying saucers. I think some UFO sightings are completely believed by the people who claim to have seen them, but they most likely saw something else, such as a military plane or even a weird storm. Thanks for your listening to the Reddit books. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for getting new video daily. Let us know in the comments what you think below about the information of the video. See you next video.